Hey everyone, today I'm going to give you a rundown of the best airplanes to use based on what you're going to be doing in the game. I'm going to look at the best planes to learn the game, explore cities, do valley runs, and a whole bunch more, so make sure to stick around for that. Before I get to it, I'd love to hear from you to know what type of content you'd want to see more of on the channel, so please make sure to put that in the comments below. And as usual, if you get any value out of this video, please make sure to hit like and subscribe. It really makes a big difference. Alright, the first scenario that I am looking at is the aircraft used to first learn the game. For anyone who's been watching this channel for a while, they'll probably know that that plane for me is the Savage Cub. A lot of the other planes in the game that we're going to see bombard you with a lot of information. This plane does the opposite of that, and that's the reason I really like it. I use this plane for a lot of tutorials and lessons on this channel exactly for that reason. Make sure to check out my newcomers playlist for everything you might need to fly this plane. When you're looking to learn new skills though, you might need a slightly more complex plane than the Cub. That's where the Cessna 152 and 172 come into play. Both of these planes have a long tradition of being trainer aircraft in the real world, and for a really good reason. It's easy to fly and it won't punish you for small mistakes that you make along the way. In the standard version of the game, the 152 has the traditional avionics stack, so if you want to learn that, it's one of the better planes to do so. And if you want to focus on learning the modern avionics stack, you can use the Cessna 172. It comes built in with the G1000 GPS, which you'll find on most of the planes in the game. Both of these planes have most of the components that you're going to want to practice using before moving up to the bigger planes. Things like flaps, propeller controls, mixture controls, cowl flaps, they're all available on either the 152 or the 172, depending on what you're looking for. Next up on the list is the best planes to use for bush trips and backcountry flights. This is probably one of my favorite categories and one of the things I do the most in the game, and my two favorite planes for that are the X-Cub and the Cessna 208 Grand Caravan. The X-Cub is my plane of choice because it's got plenty of power to get you over most mountains, and it doesn't need much in terms of takeoff or landing requirements. It's also got the nice G1000 GPS built into it, so that if you get lost you can easily find your way. For more extreme situations and higher altitudes, I like to use the Cessna 208. It has a turboprop engine, so it'll naturally be able to handle higher altitudes and more difficult situations a little bit better than the X-Cub. I can't imagine doing this landing in the X-Cub, but in the Cessna 208 it's a whole lot of fun because the engine just has plenty of grunt power to get you wherever you want to go. When it comes to exploring urban areas, my favorite plane to do that is the Diamond DA40 NG. Obviously, if you're flying in a city, you're probably going to want to take it nice and slow to be able to take it all in. The Diamond has you covered with that because it has a very low cruise speed of around 110 to 120 knots. There are other planes in the game that can do this, obviously, but I find the Diamond has one of the better views out of the cockpit in the game. It's also really easy to fly, which is especially important when you are mostly focused on looking at the scenery rather than flying the airplane. If you're going to be doing some island hopping and you want the flexibility of being able to land and on water, the only option for you in the game is the Icon A5. It won't fly very far or very fast, but for small areas with closely linked islands like I am right now, it can be nice to pretend to be wealthy enough to own one of these planes and just have a whole bunch of fun with it. One of the more fun categories would have to be valley runs and stunts. For this you've got two amazing options in the game, that's the Extra 330 or the Robin Cap 10. I don't do these types of flights too often, but they can be a whole lot of fun. I definitely had a bunch of fun recording this video in the Grand Canyon with the Extra 330. My personal preference is for the Extra over the Robin, but I think it's mostly for historical reasons. There's been an Extra in Flight Simulator as far back as I can remember, so I've just always been using it even from the early days of Flight Simulator 98. It's also the closest thing you're going to get to a fighter plane in the standard version of the game. In fact, I know a few places that use the Extra for their jet fighter experiences since it's a two-seater airplane. The next category that I'm looking at is cross-country trips. I usually define a cross-country trip as something between 50 to 100 nautical miles. My favorite plane for that is the Beechcraft Bonanza. It's one of my favorite planes in the game because it's super easy to fly. It's also got all the components that you're going to need to practice with before moving on to a bigger plane, like retractable gear, a higher cruise altitude, a higher airspeed, and more complex instruments. Once you're looking to move up to a multi-engine aircraft, one of the best planes to do that is again a Diamond aircraft, this time the DA-62. It's a propeller-based plane, so it'll be a little bit slower than its turboprop equivalents, but it'll still get you used to everything you need to know and learn about how to fly a multi-engine aircraft. It also makes your life a little bit easier than the other dual-engine aircraft because it has constant rate propellers, so it's just one less thing that you have to worry about. As such, this plane is great for getting ready to fly the bigger and faster turboprops. The DA-62 is also a beautiful aircraft to look at, and it's one that I tend to take the most screenshots of. When you want to get somewhere fast though, there probably isn't a better option than the TPM 930. It's great for when you want to start to travel longer distances because it's got such a high cruise airspeed. I don't really have much to say about the TPM because I haven't flown it a ton, but the few times that I have flown it, I've always enjoyed the challenge of the higher powered engine. When it comes to flying in bad weather and strong winds, there isn't one airplane that's going to be much better than the other, but obviously the bigger the airplane is, the less they're going to get thrown around. The smaller airplanes in the game can't even take off if the winds are too strong. So in that sense, you won't have a choice but to move on to a bigger airplane like the King Air, or the business jets, or even the airliners if you want to fly in really extreme weather. I don't really fly in really bad weather, except if I'm flying one of the different landing scenarios. It's not something that I really enjoy doing myself. Finally, if you want to do cross-continent or long-haul flights, you've got two options. I don't really like flying these types of flights either, and I really don't do it all that often other than to practice my takeoffs and landings with the bigger planes. But if long-haul flights are something that you like doing, there's no better plane to do it than the 747. It isn't called the Queen of the Skies for nothing. On top of that, if you're running the premium version of the game, I would highly recommend using the 787 Dreamliner. I've enjoyed this plane every time I've flown on it myself as a passenger, and it's a whole bunch of fun in the game as well. It always amazes me how much the wings flex on this aircraft. And that concludes my breakdown of when to use each plane in the game. If there are any scenarios I forgot to cover, please make sure to put them in the comments below and I'll make sure to get back to you. Otherwise, please make sure to hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.